Hi, friend. Welcome to a brand new week of Simply Bible Exodus. We have arrived to Exodus chapter 33, and once again, we get just a beautiful window seat into God's grace and His faithfulness to His people. I love it. And I also love this idea that Moses is a friend of God. So let's dig in, asking those detective questions. That's how I kind of tackled this lesson today. And in the beginning, in verse 1, we have the Lord said to Moses. We've seen this so many times in the book of Exodus. Here we are once again with who? The Lord speaking to Moses. Where are they? Again, they are on Mount Sinai. When? Now, this is a little bit different today. The when is after Moses and Joshua had gone back down the mountain. They had finished their time with the Lord. They had finished their time receiving His instructions. And they go down and they themselves witness the Israelites just... I forget the word that the Lord uses, but they've basically shot themselves in the foot. They have sinned greatly by creating this golden idol and worshiping this idol. Moses sees it. He sees the broken covenant between them and the Lord, that they have broken their promise to the Lord, and he breaks those tablets that the Lord has given him. That kind of was a seal. It kind of sealed the deal. Here was the law of that covenant promise between the people and the Lord. While Moses, as we learned last week, went back up the mountain to intercede between the Lord and the people. He is just an amazing leader. We talked about that last week. So today, that's the win for today. Moses is back up on the mountain. He's had this conversation with the Lord. The Lord has relented from destroying the people. And he poured out his grace, saying, Moses, you will lead this people. You will lead them to the promised land. And here he goes ahead and gives the command, depart, go up from here, go up to the land flowing with milk and honey. So the Lord gives the word, look, you all have been at Mount Sinai long enough. It's time to head to the promised land. This land, a cross-reference, friends, was Genesis chapter 12, verse 7. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring, I will give this land. All right, so here's a covenant promise made all the way back in Genesis chapter 12 between the Lord and Abram. The Lord had promised this land to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and that promise continues. And the Lord is saying, look, go now, go there. All right, so that's basically the what. And within that, friends, don't we see God's grace? Hear his grace. The people of Israel have sinned greatly. They have broken the covenant promise. They have been unfaithful. But here is the Lord's grace to send them on their way, to keep His covenant promise. He will be faithful to it, and He sends the people on their way. And he reiterates here that He will give this land to them and to their offspring. Again, here is His grace. Here is His faithfulness. He also tells Moses, look, I will send an angel before them to drive out their enemies. Again, here's His grace, His assurance that He is going to make sure they arrive to the promised land, and He will fight on their behalf. Here's a reminder, like the cross reference was Exodus 14:19. We will remember this. Then the angel of God who was going before The host of Israel moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. That is when they were at the Red Sea. They see Pharaoh and his army approaching, and the Lord, this angel of the Lord, intercedes on their behalf. They didn't have to do anything. They only had to be silent and watch the Lord. The Lord fought for them that day. And in essence, he promises to fight for them. He will take care of their enemies when they reach the promised land. Again, grace upon grace upon grace. And I think we need to see his graciousness, his mercy, his steadfast faithfulness, and his love and care for this people. But there's a but. There is a but, and that is in the middle of verse 3. He says, "Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey, but I will not go among you, lest I consume you on the way, for you are a stiff-necked people." All right, in a sense, here is his grace. Look, I don't want to do anything to destroy you at this point. I will be faithful to my promise, but I will not go up among you. Friends, remember all the instructions the Lord has given Moses for creating this tabernacle. This tabernacle is supposed to be right smack in the middle of his people, where the Lord would dwell among his people. He would dwell with them, in the midst of them, and they would be encamped all the way around his dwelling place. We see something very, very different here, don't we? All right, so why does the Lord say he will not go among them, lest I consume you? For you are a stiff-necked people. You are a stubborn people. That's the synonym in this case. And if we stop and think about it, and if we backtracked all the way through all of our Exodus series, how many miracles, how many miracles have we seen the Lord provide on behalf of the people of Israel? They have experienced God's provision, God's rescue time and time and time and time and time again. But they have, despite experiencing his might, his care, his presence, his own personal oath, they turned to an idol instead. Pretty sad. So this is the reason why the Lord says he will not go up among you. And what was the result then? Well, I think the result is promising. The result is good. The people mourn. They grieve. The Lord commands them to take off their ornaments, take off their fancy things, take off their jewelry, and mourn, to grieve. And what's kind of interesting is in verse 6, it doesn't seem like they put them back on before they leave. It doesn't seem that they put them back on for the journey to the promised land. Did you see that? Verse 6, "Therefore the people of Israel stripped themselves of their ornaments from Mount Horeb onward." All right, so it seems like they travel very simply in their mourning. To mourn means to grieve, to feel sadness and express it through vocalizations, express it through tears, express it through rituals, which can include the way that we dress, the way that we adorn ourselves outwardly. And that's exactly what we see here. All right, so that's the first half of today's passage. The second half, starting in the third paragraph at verse 7, this is all about Moses. The camera zooms in on Moses, and what is he doing? He pitches a tent. He sets up a tent. And this word tent is mentioned 11 times in this paragraph, so that's the focus. I think we got the camera right on this tent that Moses pitches. Where? Outside of the camp. All right, so the who is Moses, the what is his setting up this tent, and he calls it the tent of meeting, where it is outside the camp. The scripture says far off from the camp. And it's made abundantly clear that this tent of meeting is set up far away from the people of Israel. It is at a distance from the people of Israel. Remember, that tabernacle was supposed to be right smack in the middle where God would dwell among his people. This tent of meeting is way outside the camp. It is away from the people. Now, why does Moses set up this tent? Well, here is where he will meet with the Lord. And it's beautiful, friends. Look at verse 11. Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses would enter that tent, the pillar of cloud would descend, stand at the entrance of the tent, and here they would meet together. I get goosebumps over that. And what's interesting about all of this, so Moses is worshiping the Lord. He's communing with the Lord. He's connecting with the Lord face to face as a friend. As a friend. Somewhere I wrote the definition of a friend. I thought I did. Wow, I'm not seeing it just in this moment. I'm sorry, and I don't want to take a lot of time to look that up. Maybe I'll come across it as I continue to talk. Oh, here it is in my application. A friend, a person you know well and regard with affection and trust. That's my Bible dictionary's definition of a friend. A person you know well and regard with affection and trust. Moses and the Lord have this mutual friendship. They know each other well. They have mutual affection for one another, and they trust one another. Oh, friends, my application for today is that. Don't we want to be his friend? Because we see the opposite here. We see the people of Israel. Look at them. How are they worshiping the Lord? Well, it's kind of beautiful what we see. We have very clear detail. Whenever Moses went out to the tent, all the people would rise up. They would stand at their tent door. They would watch Moses go into the tent. Then they would watch this pillar of cloud come down and stand at the entrance of the tent. And then they would worship. They would worship at a distance from their own tent doors. They worship from afar. They are distant from the Lord. I think the hope here is they are still worshiping. They are definitely worshiping the Lord, and they are seeking him, but they are worshiping from afar versus Moses meets the Lord face to face. As a friend, I can't get enough of this. As a person you know well, as someone you regard with affection and trust. Oh, friends, let us thank Jesus for this reminder today that he has allowed for us to be God's friends. By his work on the cross, we are able to go into the tent with the Lord and meet with him face to face. Oh, let us seek to be his friend, to just be in his presence, to enjoy this relationship, to connect with him in love and enjoy his presence. Oh, my heart cry for all of us today is that we might know him affectionately as a friend and enjoy his presence.